The starship Dawn of Hope floated in the darkness of space, surrounded by 100 warships from the Valtteri Empire. Inside the ship, humans walked through metal hallways with fear in their hearts. They had been stopped. They had been trapped. And now, they waited for judgment. Lieutenant Una Park stood in her small room and looked at the 3 small creatures sleeping on her bed. They were Filaria species that looked like cats but walked on 2 legs. Their fur was soft and gray, and their ears were large and pointed. The oldest one was named Duri. He was brave and always tried to protect the others. The middle one was Bomi. She was fast and clever. The youngest was Taiho. He was quiet and liked to watch everything with his big golden eyes. Una had found them 6 months ago, hiding inside a broken cargo container. Their world had been destroyed by the Valtteri Empire. Their parents were dead. They had traveled alone through space for weeks, eating nothing but scraps and drinking recycled water. When Una opened that container and saw 3 pairs of frightened eyes looking back at her, something changed inside her heart that she fed them. She gave them warm blankets. She taught them human words and learned their language too. She read them stories at night and held them when they had bad dreams. The crew of the Dawn of Hope helped her hide the cubs from official records. Everyone knew that the Valtteri considered the Filari to be property, not people. If the Empire found out, they would take the cubs away. But the Empire had found out. A spy on another ship had sent a message. Now the Valtteri fleet surrounded them, and the Galactic Council had been called to decide what would happen next. Una touched Duri's head gently. He opened his eyes and looked up at her. "Is it time?" he asked in his small voice. "Not yet," she whispered. "Go back to sleep." But she knew it was almost time. The council meeting would start in 1 hour. Commander Jisoo Han found Una in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Jisoo was a tall woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had commanded the Dawn of Hope for 5 years, and she had never lost a crew member. She did not want to start now. "The council will rule against us," Jisoo said. "You know this." "I know," Una replied. "The Valtteri want their property back. They have the law on their side. The old treaties say that the Filari belong to the Empire." "They are not property," Una said. Her voice was quiet but strong. "They are children." Jisoo sighed. "I agree with you. But the council does not care what we think. They care about peace with the Empire. They will order us to give the cubs back. Then I will not follow that order." Jisoo grabbed Una's arm and turned her around. "Do you understand what you are saying? They will arrest you. They might execute you. Is that what you want?" Una looked at her commander with clear eyes. 6 months ago, those children had nothing. They had no home, no family, no hope. I gave them all 3. I cannot take it away now. The council chamber was a huge room on the space station called Neutral Ground. Representatives from 50 species sat in circles around the central platform. The Valtteri delegation sat in the highest seats, their snake-like bodies coiled on cushions of red silk. Their leader was called Emperor Korvax the Endless. He had ruled the Empire for 300 years, and he had never shown mercy to anyone. Una walked to the central platform alone. She wore her blue uniform, pressed and clean. Her black hair was tied back, and her face showed no fear, even though her heart was beating fast. "The human called Una Park," the council speaker announced. "You stand accused of theft. You took 3 Filari from Imperial space. By the laws of the Treaty of Silent Stars, the Filari species belongs to the Valtteri Empire. How do you answer?" Una looked up at Emperor Korvax. His yellow eyes watched her like a snake watching a mouse. "I answer that the cubs were alone and dying," she said. "I answer that I saved their lives. I answer that no living being should belong to another." The chamber filled with whispers. Some species nodded. Others shook their heads. The Velthari hissed with anger. Korvax raised one clawed hand, and the room went silent. "The human speaks of morality," he said. His voice was cold and smooth. "But morality does not change law. The Falari are ours. Return them, and this matter ends. And if I refuse?" Korvax smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then you may invoke the trial of supremacy, an ancient right. You will fight in our arena, alone, against our chosen beasts. If you win, the cubs go free and belong to humanity forever. If you lose," he let the silence speak for him. The council speaker stepped forward. "Lieutenant Park, this trial has been invoked 17 times. No one has survived. You have the right to refuse and accept the council's judgment instead." Yuna thought of Dory's brave little face. She thought of Bomi's quick smile. She thought of Taiho's quiet purr when he fell asleep in her arms. "I do not refuse," she said. "I accept the trial of supremacy." The chamber exploded with noise. Jisoo stood up from the human section, her face pale. Other humans tried to call out to Yuna to make her change her mind. But Yuna did not look at them. She looked only at the observation window high above, where 3 small faces pressed against the glass. Dury was holding his brother and sister close. All 3 of them were crying. Yuna raised her hand to them. She did not wave goodbye. She made a promise, a fist over her heart, the way she had taught them. "I will come back to you." She did not know if it was true, but she knew she had to try Dodd as the guards led her away to prepare for transport to the Velthari homeworld. Jisoo caught up with her in the hallway. "You are going to die," Jisoo said. "You know that." "Maybe," Yuna replied. "But I will die standing up. I will die fighting. And those children will know that someone loved them enough to try." Jisoo's eyes filled with tears. She had known Yuna for 3 years. She had never seen anyone so brave or so foolish. "Your grandmother would be proud," Jisoo said. Yuna smiled for the first time that day. "My grandmother survived a war, a famine, and 3 terrible husbands. She taught me that fear is just a feeling. It cannot kill you. Only quitting can." The transport ship was waiting. The Velthari guards pushed Yuna inside. The door closed behind her dot in the observation room. 3 cubs held each other and watched the ship fly away toward distant stars. They did not cry anymore. Dory wiped his eyes and looked at his brother and sister. "She's going to fight for us," he said. "We must find a way to fight for her." Bomi nodded. Taiho said nothing, but his golden eyes burned with something new. Hope. The planet was called Velthar Prime, and it was a world of darkness. The sky was always covered with thick clouds, and the sun was just a pale circle behind the gray. The Velthari had built their cities from black stone, and their tallest building was the Grand Arena, a coliseum that could hold 5 million spectators. Yuna arrived in chains. The guards dragged her through underground tunnels that smelled like blood and fear. She heard screams from other prisoners in their cells. She saw bones piled in corners, bones from creatures she could not name. This was a place where things came to die. They threw her into a small room with a metal door. There was no bed, no water, no window. Just cold stone walls and a single light that flickered above her head. Yuna sat in the corner and closed her eyes. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother, Yoonji, who made the best soup in all of Bezin. Her father, who had died when she was young but had taught her to never give up. Her grandmother, who had lived through so much pain and still smiled every day. She thought about her training. 20 years of martial arts. 10 years in the military. 5 years in special forces. She had fought pirates and rebels and criminals. She had been shot twice and stabbed once. She had always survived, but she had never fought a Shadowmaw. The guards came for her at dawn. They took her chains off and gave her a thin combat suit to wear. No weapons, no armor, just a gray uniform that would not stop claws or teeth. "You have 1 hour," the guard said. "Pray to whatever gods you believe in." Yuna did not pray. She stretched her muscles and practiced her breathing. She remembered every lesson her teachers had taught her. She remembered every fight she had won. Fear is just a feeling. It cannot kill you. The tunnel to the arena was long and dark. Yuna walked alone, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. She could hear the crowd above her, millions of voices screaming for blood. Most of them wanted her to die. Humans were new to the galaxy. Humans were weak. Humans would learn their place. The iron gates opened, and light flooded her eyes. The arena was a circle of black sand, surrounded by walls 50 meters high. Above the walls, seats rose up like mountains, filled with creatures from 100 different worlds. Some looked like insects. Some looked like lizards. Some looked like nothing Yuna had ever seen before. But they all had one thing in common. They were here to watch her die. At the top of the arena, on a throne made of bones, sat Emperor Korvax the Endless. His body was coiled like a great snake, and his yellow eyes watched Yuna with cold interest. Beside him sat his generals and his advisors, all of them waiting for the entertainment to begin. Korvax raised his hand, and the crowd went silent. People of the Empire and guests from across the stars. His voice boomed through speakers built into the walls. "Today we witness the trial of supremacy. A human female has stolen property from our great nation. She has refused to return what she took. Now she must prove her worth or die like the animal she is." The crowd cheered. They stamped their feet and clapped their claws. The sound was like thunder. "Release the Shadowmaws," Korvax commanded. On the other side of the arena, 3 massive gates began to open. The metal groaned and screamed as it moved. Behind the gates, Yuna could see shadows moving, big shadows, bigger than anything she had expected. The first Shadowmaw stepped into the light. It was a monster. There was no other word for it. The creature stood 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 legs that ended in curved claws. Its body was covered in black scales that seemed to swallow the light. Its head was like a wolf's head, but with 3 rows of teeth and eyes that glowed red like fire. The second Shadowmaw followed the first. Then the third. 3 monsters. 1 human. No weapons. Yuna's heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. Every part of her body was screaming at her to run, but there was nowhere to run. She thought about the cubs. She thought about Dory's brave little face. She thought about Bomi's quick smile. She thought about Taiho's quiet purr. "I promised them. I promised." Yuna raised her fists. "Come on," she whispered. "Let's see what you've got." The first Shadowmaw charged. It moved faster than anything the big should move. One moment it was across the arena, and the next moment it was right in front of her. Its jaws opened wide enough to swallow her whole. Yuna dove to the side. The creature's teeth missed her by centimeters. She rolled on the sand and came up running, putting distance between herself and the beast. The crowd laughed. They thought she was running away. They thought she was afraid. They were right about the fear, but they were wrong about the running. Yuna was not trying to escape. She was studying the creature. She watched how it moved. She watched how it turned. She noticed that when it ran, its back legs pushed harder than its middle legs. She noticed that when it opened its jaws, it could not see directly in front of itself. The second Shadowmaw attacked from her left. Yuna jumped forward, letting the creature pass behind her. The third one was waiting, but it moved too slowly. Yuna slid under its belly and came up on the other side. She was faster than them. Not by much, but enough. The crowd stopped laughing. For 10 minutes, Yuna danced with death. The Shadowmaws attacked again and again, and she dodged every strike. Her body moved like water, flowing around their claws and teeth. She was tired. She was bleeding from small cuts where the creatures had almost caught her. But she was still alive. The first Shadowmaw charged again, and this time Yuna did not dodge. She ran toward it. The crowd gasped out at the last moment. Yuna jumped. She grabbed the creature's head and swung herself onto its back. Before it could shake her off, she wrapped her arm around its throat and squeezed with all her strength. The Shadowmaw thrashed and screamed. It slammed its body against the arena walls, trying to crush her. Yuna felt her ribs crack. She felt blood fill her mouth. But she did not let go. She remembered her grandmother's voice that fear is just a feeling. It cannot kill you. Only quitting can. She squeezed harder. The Shadowmaw's legs began to shake. Its movements became slower. It fell to its knees, then to its belly. Its red eyes grew dim. Yuna crushed its windpipe, and the monster died. The arena was completely silent. No one had ever killed a Shadowmaw in the trial. No one had even hurt one. This small human female had done the impossible. Yuna stood up slowly. Her left arm hung at her side, broken or dislocated. She could not tell. 3 of her ribs were cracked. Blood dripped from a wound on her shoulder. She could barely breathe, but she was still standing. She looked up at Emperor Korvax. For the first time, she saw something new in his yellow eyes. Fear. 2 left, Yuna said. Her voice was weak, but the speakers carried it across the arena. Is that all you have? The crowd did not cheer or laugh now. They watched in stunned silence as the 2 remaining Shadowmaws began to circle the wounded human. Yuna raised her one good fist. She was going to die. She knew that now. 2 against 1, and she was already broken. But she would die fighting. She would die standing, and somewhere across the stars, 3 little cubs would know that their mother had loved them enough to try. The Shadowmaws charged. The 2 Shadowmaws attacked at the same time, one from the left and one from the right. Yuna had no time to think. Her body moved on its own, dropping to the ground as 2 sets of claws slashed through the air above her head. She rolled away and stood up, but her legs almost gave out. The pain in her ribs was terrible. Every breath felt like fire in her chest. Her broken arm hung useless at her side. The creatures turned and came at her again. Yuna tried to dodge, but she was too slow. One of the Shadowmaws caught her with its claw, sending her flying across the arena. She hit the wall hard and fell to the sand. For a moment, everything went dark. Get up, a voice said in her head. It sounded like her grandmother. Get up, little one. You are not finished yet. Yuna opened her eyes. The Shadowmaws were walking toward her slowly now. They knew she was hurt. They knew she could not run anymore. They were going to take their time. She tried to stand, but her body would not obey. Her legs were shaking. Her vision was blurry. She could taste blood in her mouth. This is it, she thought. This is how I die. Above her, in the highest seats, Emperor Korvax leaned forward with a smile on his snake-like face. The crowd began to cheer again. They could see the end coming. They could smell the blood. Finish her, Korvax commanded. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. The Shadowmaws opened their jaws and prepared to strike. And then something small and gray dropped from the arena walls. Duri landed between Yuna and the monsters. His tiny body was trembling with fear, but his claws were out and his golden eyes were bright. He looked so small compared to the creatures in front of him, like a house cat standing before 2 wolves. The crowd gasped. What is this? Korvax shouted. How did that thing get into my arena? 2 more shapes appeared from the shadows. Bomi climbed down from a crack in the wall, moving fast and quiet like the predator her species had evolved to be. Taiho followed her, his small paws carrying him across the sand to stand beside his brother. 3 Falari cubs. 3 children who should have been hiding. 3 small hearts that could not watch their mother die alone. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered. "No, you should not be here. Run. Please run." Duri looked back at her. His voice was steady even though his body was shaking. "You cannot fight alone, mother," he said. "Falari do not abandon family. The rules say no allies." Korvac screamed. His voice echoed across the arena. "This violates the sacred trial. Guards, kill them all, the human and the cubs." But the guards did not move. They stood at their posts, frozen. Some of them were looking at the cubs with strange expressions on their faces. Some of them were looking at Yuna. No one had ever seen anything like this before. No one had ever seen someone so small stand against something so big. Bomi did not wait for the guards to decide. She ran at the first shadow maw, moving so fast she was almost invisible. The creature tried to catch her with its claws, but she was too quick. She dove under its belly and slashed at its back legs with her claws. The shadow maw screamed. Falari claws were small, but they were sharp. They were designed for climbing trees and catching prey. They could cut through leather and wood and even thin metal. They could cut through the soft skin behind a shadow maw's knee. The creature's leg buckled, and it stumbled forward. Bomi was already gone, running across the arena to draw its attention away from Yuna. Taiho, the quiet one, the careful one, had been studying the arena for hours. He had memorized every crack in the walls, every pile of sand, every shadow where something could hide. Now he used that knowledge. He grabbed stones and threw them at the second shadow maw's eyes. He kicked sand into its face. He made noise from different directions to confuse it. The creature did not know which way to attack. It spun in circles, snapping at shadows, while the real threat stayed just out of reach. Duri stayed beside Yuna. He put his small paws under her arm and tried to lift her. "You must get up," he said. "You must fight. We cannot do this without you." Yuna looked at her children. Her broken, brave, beautiful children. She had found them dying in a cargo container. She had saved their lives. But now they were trying to save hers. Something hot and bright burned inside her chest. It was not pain. It was not fear. It was love. Yuna stood up. Her legs were weak, but they held her. Her ribs screamed with every breath, but she kept breathing. Her broken arm hung at her side, but she still had one good fist. "Stay behind me," she said to Duri. The little Falari shook his head. "No, we stay beside you." The crowd was silent now. 5 million beings watched as one wounded human and 3 tiny cubs faced 2 monsters that had never been defeated. It was impossible. It was stupid. It was the bravest thing anyone had ever seen. Yuna ran at the first shadow maw, the one Bomi had wounded. It tried to stand, but its leg would not work properly. She jumped and kicked it in the face with all the strength she had left. The creature fell. Before it could get up, Yuna was on top of it. She used her knee, her elbow, her forehead, anything that could hurt. She hit its eyes and its nose and its throat. The shadow maw tried to bite her, but Duri was there, slashing at its face with his claws to keep its jaws away from his mother. Yuna found the soft spot under the creature's chin. She drove her elbow down with all her weight. The shadow maw stopped moving. 2 down, 1 left. But Yuna had nothing left. She collapsed on top of the dead monster, her body finally giving up. She could not move. She could not even lift her head. The last shadow maw charged. Bomi screamed. Taiho threw every stone he could find. Duri stood in front of Yuna with his tiny claws raised, ready to die for his mother. And then a sound filled the arena, a sound that no one expected. Cheering. Not from the Velthari. From the other species. In the lower seats, where the conquered people sat, beings began to stand. The Marvani, tall and thin and blue, rose first. They had been slaves of the Empire for 200 years. They began to chant a single word in their language. Tail. 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 Family. The Gelthrix rose next. They were small and furry, not unlike the Falari. The Empire had taken their homeworld 30 years ago. They joined the chant with their own word. Kethra. 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 Family. The Pale Wanderers. The Stone Singers. The people of the deep dark, species after species, stood and added their voices. Family. 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 The last Shadowmaw stopped. It looked around the arena, confused by the noise. It did not understand why its prey was not afraid anymore. Yuna lifted her head. The entire Colosseum was shaking with the sound of a single idea, an idea that the Velthari had tried to destroy for 300 years but could never quite kill. Family was not about blood. Family was not about species. Family was about love and sacrifice and standing together when everything was against you. The Shadow Maw looked at Yuna. It looked at the 3 tiny cubs standing in front of her. And then it did something that Shadow Maws had never done before. It lay down. The monster lowered its head to the sand and closed its red eyes. It was tired. It had been bred and tortured and forced to fight for its entire life. And now, for the first time, it saw something that confused its simple brain. It saw courage. It saw love. It saw a family that would rather die together than live apart. And it chose not to fight anymore. Emperor Korvax stood up from his throne, his snake body trembling with rage. "Kill them," he screamed. "I command you. Guards, kill them all." But the guards did not move. The chanting grew louder. Family, family, family. Something was changing in the arena. Something was changing in the Empire. And it had all started with one human who refused to let go of 3 little cubs. The chanting did not stop. It grew louder and louder until the walls of the arena began to shake. 5 million voices from 100 different species filled the air with a single message that Emperor Korvax had spent his entire life trying to ush. Silence. Family. 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 The Emperor stood on his throne, his yellow eyes wide with fear and rage. He had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions. He had burned worlds. He had made entire species disappear from history. But he had never faced anything like this. "Guards," he screamed again. "I command you to act. Kill the human. Kill the cubs. Kill anyone who stands in your way." The guards looked at each other. Some of them were Velthari, loyal to the Empire. But many of them were from conquered species forced to serve, forced to fight, forced to watch their own people suffer. One guard stepped forward. He was a Marvani, tall and blue with silver eyes. He had served the Empire for 40 years. He had followed every order, no matter how terrible. He had told himself it was the only way to survive. But now he looked at the arena floor. He saw a broken human woman lying on the sand, barely able to move. He saw 3 tiny cubs standing in front of her, ready to die for the only mother they had ever known. He saw a Shadow Maw monster created for killing choose peace. Instead of violence, the guard took off his helmet and dropped it on the ground. "No," he said. His voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it. "No more." Other guards began to do the same. Helmets fell. Weapons were lowered. One by one, the soldiers of the Empire remembered who they had been before the conquest. They remembered their families, their homes, their children. They remembered what it meant to be free. High above the arena, watching from the human diplomatic vessel, Admiral Hyan Choi saw everything. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been a soldier for 50 years, and he had seen many wars. But he had never seen anything like this. He opened the communication channel to every ship in the system Valtteri, human and neutral alike. His voice was calm and steady. "Let the galaxy witness what is happening today," he said. A single human woman stood alone against impossible odds. She did not fight for territory. She did not fight for power. She did not fight for revenge. She fought for 3 children who had no one else. On the arena floor, Yuna could barely hear the Admiral's words. Her body was broken. Her vision was fading. But she felt small paws touching her face, and she heard small voices calling her name. "Mother," Duri said. "Mother, stay awake. Please stay awake." "We won," Bomi added. Her voice was shaking. "The monsters are gone." "We won." Taiho did not speak. He just curled up against Yuna's side and purred a soft, gentle sound that vibrated through her broken body like music. Admiral Choi continued his broadcast. For 300 years, the Valtteri Empire has told the galaxy that strength means cruelty, that power means domination, that the strong exist to rule the weak. Today, one human proved them wrong. In the seats of the arena, species that had been enemies began to look at each other differently. The Mavani reached out to the Gelthrix. The Stone Singers clasped hands with the Pale Wanderers. Creatures who had never spoken to each other found themselves standing side by side. "Humanity is young in this galaxy," the Admiral said. "We have made mistakes. We will make more. But we believe in something that the Empire has tried to destroy. We believe that family is not about blood or species or birth. Family is about choice. Family is about love." Emperor Korvax tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the noise. The chanting had become a roar. The entire arena was alive with sound and movement. His guards were gone. His power was crumbling. For the first time in 300 years, he was afraid. Today, a human woman chose 3 orphan cubs as her family. Today, those cubs chose to die beside their mother rather than live without her. Today, a monster chose peace instead of war. On the arena floor, medical teams were finally pushing through the crowd. They were not Valtteri, they were volunteers from a dozen different species. Doctors and healers who had rushed down from the stands to help. A Gelthrix doctor knelt beside Yuna and scanned her body with a small device. His furry face was tight with worry. "Multiple broken ribs," he said. "Fractured arm. Internal bleeding. We need to get her to a medical ship immediately." "Will she live?" Duri asked. His voice was small and scared, the voice of a child who had already lost one mother and could not bear to lose another. The doctor looked at the little cub. He saw the blood on Duri's paws, the scratches on his fur, the fear in his golden eyes. He saw a child who had just fought monsters to save someone he loved. "She will live," the doctor said. "I promise you, little one. She will live." Admiral Choi's broadcast reached its end. Let the galaxy remember this day. Let them remember that when the human entered the arena alone, 3 small cubs stepped from the shadows to stand beside her. Let them remember that love is stronger than hate, that family is stronger than empire, and that the smallest voice can shake the largest throne. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. And let the Valtteri Empire remember this. Humanity stands with the Folari. We stand with the Morvani, the Gelthrix, the Stone Singers, and every other species you have conquered. Touch one of us, and you touch all of us. Hurt one of us, and you will answer to all of us. The medical team lifted Yuna onto a stretcher. The 3 cubs refused to leave her side. They walked beside her through the crowd, Their small heads held high. The people in the stands parted to let them pass. Some of them bowed. Some of them cried. Some of them reached out to touch Yuna's hand or pat the cubs' heads gently. A Morvani child no older than Dory broke free from her mother and ran to Bomi. She pressed a small flower into the cub's paw. "Thank you," the Morvani girl whispered. "Thank you for being brave." Bomi did not know what to say. She had never felt like she was brave. She had just done what any family would do. "You are welcome," she finally said. "Take care of your family." The girl nodded and ran back to her mother. At the top of the arena, Emperor Korvax stood alone on his throne. His generals had fled. His advisors had disappeared. The greatest ruler in galactic history had become a snake without fangs. He watched the human woman being carried away. He watched the 3 cubs walking beside her. He watched his empire beginning to crack. A Velthari general appeared beside him, one of the few who remained loyal. "Your Majesty," the general said, "what do we do? The conquered peoples are rising. The guards have abandoned their posts. The other species are demanding freedom." Korvax did not answer for a long moment. His yellow eyes followed the stretcher until it disappeared through the arena gates. "1 human," he whispered. "1 human and 3 cubs, Your Majesty?" They should have meant nothing. They should have been crushed in seconds. But look at what they have done. The general had no answer. Korvax turned away from the arena and slithered toward his private chambers. His body was still strong. His mind was still sharp. He had ruled for 300 years, and he would not give up so easily. But he understood something now that he had not understood before. The human had not won because she was stronger. She had not won because she was faster or smarter or better armed. She had won because she had something to fight for, and that was more dangerous than any weapon in the galaxy. In the medical bay of a human rescue ship, Yuna opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was 3 furry faces looking down at her. "Hello, children," she whispered. Duri burst into tears. Bomi laughed and cried at the same time. Taiho simply climbed onto the bed and curled up against her chest, purring so loudly that the medical machines began to beep in protest. Yuna wrapped her one good arm around them and held them close. She was broken. She was tired. She had almost died, but her family was safe, and that was all that mattered. 1 year had passed since the trial of supremacy. The galaxy had changed, not all at once and not easily, but it had changed. The Velthari Empire still existed, but it was smaller now. 12 star systems had declared independence in the months after the arena. The Morvani had been the first, followed by the Gelthrics and the Stone Singers. Others followed, one by one, like dominoes falling. Emperor Korvax had tried to stop them. He had sent fleets and armies. He had threatened and punished and destroyed. But something was different now. The conquered peoples were no longer afraid. They had seen a wounded human stand against monsters. They had seen 3 tiny cubs defy an empire. They had learned that courage could exist in small packages. A new alliance had formed, the Alliance of the Forgotten. It was made up of species that had been conquered, enslaved, and forgotten by history. Humanity was a founding member, though humans were careful to let the other species lead. This was not about human power. This was about freedom for everyone. The Falari homeworld had been reclaimed. Survivors who had hidden in asteroid belts and abandoned moons for decades finally came home. The planet was scarred and broken, but it was theirs again. They began to rebuild. And 3 Falari cubs became the youngest ambassadors in galactic history. Yuna recovered slowly. Her ribs healed. Her arm was rebuilt with human and Morvani technology working together. The doctor said she would never be able to fight again. The damage was too great. She smiled when they told her. "Good," she said. "I am tired of fighting." She returned to Earth with her children. The shuttle landed in Bizen, Korea, on a gray morning in autumn. Rain was falling softly from the clouds. The air smelled like the sea. Yuna's mother was waiting at the landing pad. Yoonji Park was 63 years old. Her hair was gray, and her face was lined with wrinkles, but her eyes were as bright as ever. She had watched her daughter go to the stars and feared she would never return. Now she watched her daughter walk down the ramp, moving slowly because of her healing injuries. Behind Yuna came 3 small figures, Filari cubs wrapped in warm coats that Yoonji had sent to the ship because she worried they would be cold. Yoonji did not hesitate. She walked forward and knelt on the wet ground so she could look at the cubs face to face. "You must be Dory," she said to the tallest one. "Yuna told me you are brave." Dory's ears went flat against his head. He was not used to strangers being kind to him. "Yes, grandmother," he said quietly. Yoonji smiled. No one had ever called her grandmother before. "And you must be Bomi." She turned to the middle cub. Yuna said, "You are fast." Bomi nodded. She was holding Taiho's paw tightly. "And this little one is Taiho." Yoonji reached out and touched the smallest cub's face gently. Yuna said, "You are clever." Taiho did not speak. He never spoke much. But he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against Yoonji's hand, a Filari gesture of trust and love. Yoonji's eyes filled with tears. "Welcome home," she said. "All of you." The house was small but warm. Yoonji had prepared food, more food than 4 people could possibly eat. There was soup and rice and vegetables and fish. There were fruits that Yoonji had bought from the market because she did not know what Filari children liked to eat. The cubs were shy at first. They sat at the table with their ears down and their tails curled around their legs. Everything was new and strange. The smells were different. The sounds were different. Even the light was different from the starships they had known for most of their lives. But then Yoonji put a bowl of soup in front of Taiho, and he tasted it carefully with his small pink tongue. His eyes went wide. "Good," he whispered. It was one of the only words he ever said. Bomi tried the fish. Dory tried the rice. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were eating like they had been starving for months. Yoonji laughed. Good, eat more. You are too thin." Yuna watched her mother fuss over the children, and something inside her chest felt warm and full. She had traveled across the galaxy. She had fought monsters and defied emperors. She had nearly died a dozen times. But this simple moment in a small house in Bizen, with her mother and her children and good food on the table, this was what she had been fighting for all along. After dinner, the cubs explored the house. They found Yuna's old room, which still had her childhood things in boxes. Dory discovered her books and began reading them one by one. Bomi found a collection of toy figurines and set them up in battle formations. Taiho climbed onto the windowsill and watched the rain fall, his golden eyes reflecting the water. Yoonji sat with Yuna in the kitchen and made tea. "They are beautiful children," Yoonji said. "They are," Yuna agreed. "They love you very much. I love them too." Yoonji was quiet for a moment. She looked at her daughter, at the new scars on her arms and face, at the way she held her body carefully. Because of the healed ribs, at the gray streaks in her black hair that had not been there a year ago. "Your grandmother would be proud," Yoonji said. Yuna smiled. "You always say that, because it is always true." Yoonji reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. She survived the war. She survived the famine. She survived 3 terrible husbands. But she always said that survival was not enough. Life is about love. Life is about family. Life is about finding people worth fighting for. Yuna squeezed her mother's hand. "I found them, Mama. They were alone in a cargo container, dying, and I found them. I did not plan to be a mother. I did not know how to be a mother, but when I looked at them, I knew. Knew what? That I would do anything to protect them. That I would fight anything, survive anything, sacrifice anything. That I loved them more than I loved my own life. Yoonji nodded. That is what being a mother means. Years passed. The cubs grew up. Duri became tall and strong, with gray fur and golden eyes that saw everything. He went to university on Earth and studied diplomacy. He learned how to speak in council chambers and negotiate treaties. He became an ambassador for the Alliance of the Forgotten, traveling across the galaxy to help species that had been conquered and forgotten. Bomi joined the United Earth Fleet. She trained as a pilot and then as a captain. Her ship, the Hopes, Promise, became famous for rescue missions, finding refugees, saving survivors, bringing people home. She never forgot what it felt like to be lost and alone, so she spent her life making sure no one else had to feel that way. Taiho stayed on Earth for many years. He studied biology and ecology and chemistry. He traveled to different planets and discovered 17 new species of plants and animals. His research helped heal worlds that had been damaged by war. He still did not talk much, but his work spoke for him. Yuna grew old in the house in Bizen. Her hair turned white, and her body became weak, but her mind stayed sharp. She spent her days reading and gardening and playing with her grandchildren. Yes, there were grandchildren now. Duri had married a human diplomat. Domi had adopted 4 orphan cubs from a war zone. Taiho had somehow ended up with a pet creature that no one could identify but everyone loved. Yoonji passed away peacefully at the age of 89, surrounded by family. She was buried in a small cemetery on a hill overlooking the sea. Yuna visited her grave every week, bringing flowers and talking to her mother about the children and the grandchildren and the galaxy. One day, a reporter came to interview Yuna. He was young and eager and full of questions. He had heard the story of the trial of supremacy. He had heard about the human who fought monsters and the cubs who stood beside her. He wanted to know the truth. Lieutenant Park, he said, people call you a hero. They say you changed the galaxy. What do you think about that? Yuna laughed. She was old now, and her laugh was soft. I am not a hero, she said. I am just a woman who found 3 children and loved them. But you fought the Shadowmoors. You defied the Emperor. You inspired a revolution. I fought because I had to. I defied because I had no other choice. The revolution was not my doing. It was the doing of millions of beings who were tired of being afraid. The reporter leaned forward. What advice would you give to people who face impossible odds? Who feel like they cannot win? Yuna was quiet for a moment. She looked out the window at the sea, at the clouds, at the birds flying through the gray sky. My grandmother told me something when I was young, she said. She said that fear is just a feeling. It cannot kill you. Only quitting can. She turned back to the reporter and smiled. But I will add something she did not say. When you are fighting alone, it is very hard. When you have people fighting beside you, it becomes possible. Find your family. Not just the family you are born with, but the family you choose. The people who will stand with you in the darkness. The people who love you enough to be brave. She thought of Duri and Bomi and Taiho. She thought of their children and their children's children. She thought of all the lives that had changed because one human decided to love 3 lost cubs. Find your family, she said again, and then nothing in the galaxy can stop you. The reporter thanked her and left. Yuna sat alone in her chair by the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere across the galaxy, her children were working and living and loving. Somewhere, new stories were beginning. She closed her eyes and smiled. The galaxy had expected her to fight alone. They had forgotten that no one who loves truly fights alone. And that was the most human thing of all.